For 12 years. Investigators believed this case would never be solved. There were no witnesses. No suspects. No obvious motive. Just a single photograph sitting inside an evidence file. A photograph nobody thought was important. Until one detective noticed something hidden in the background. And what he found changed everything. It was a cold November evening. 27-year-old Sarah Mitchell had just finished work. Friends described her as responsible, careful, predictable. She followed the same routine almost every day. But on this night, something was different. At 9:17 p.m., Sarah left her office and began driving home. She stopped for coffee, called a friend, and then she vanished. The next morning, her car was discovered parked along a quiet road on the edge of town. The engine was cold. Her phone was missing. And there was no sign of a struggle. It was as if she had simply disappeared into thin air. Detectives immediately launched a full investigation. They interviewed family members, friends, co-workers, anyone who might have seen Sarah that night. But every lead seemed to end the same way. Nowhere. Surveillance cameras captured only fragments of her movements. Witness accounts contradicted one another. And forensic investigators found no useful evidence inside the vehicle. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. Yet the case remained completely stalled. Eventually, public attention faded. The investigation slowed, and Sarah Mitchell's disappearance became another cold case gathering dust inside a filing cabinet. For years, the case sat untouched. Thousands of pages of reports. Hundreds of photographs. Countless hours of investigation. Yet no answers. Then, 12 years later, a newly assigned detective reopened the file. Unlike the investigators before him, he wasn't looking for new evidence. He was looking for old evidence that may have been overlooked. He reviewed every statement, every report, every photograph. That's when he noticed something unusual. In the corner of a crime scene photograph was a small reflection. Most investigators had dismissed it as meaningless, but the detective couldn't ignore it. The more he looked, the more suspicious it became. The photograph was taken just hours after Sarah disappeared. At first glance, it appeared completely ordinary. A section of road. Sarah's abandoned vehicle. And the surrounding crime scene. But hidden within the image was something investigators had overlooked for more than a decade. The reflection appeared in a small piece of glass near the edge of the frame. Barely visible. Easy to miss. The detective requested a digital enhancement of the image. What emerged was shocking. The reflection appeared to show part of a vehicle parked nearby, a vehicle that had never been mentioned in any witness statement. Never identified. And never investigated. Suddenly, the case had a new lead. A lead that had been hidden in plain sight for 12 years. Detectives immediately began searching registration records and historical databases, hoping to discover who owned the mysterious vehicle. What they found would completely change the direction of the investigation. Detectives began tracing every possible lead connected to the unidentified vehicle. Registration databases, insurance records, archived traffic camera footage, anything that could reveal who owned the car. For weeks, investigators followed dozens of dead ends. Then one record stood out. The vehicle was linked to a man who lived less than 5 miles from where Sarah's car had been discovered. At first, the connection seemed insignificant. But as detectives dug deeper, troubling details began to emerge. The man had crossed paths with Sarah several times in the months before her disappearance, yet he had never mentioned knowing her. Investigators brought him in for questioning. He denied any involvement. He denied knowing anything about the case. But detectives noticed inconsistencies in his story. Small contradictions. Details that didn't match the evidence. For the first time in 12 years, investigators believed they might finally have a suspect. Detectives continued examining every piece of evidence connected to the suspect. And this time, they had tools that investigators 12 years earlier never had. Advances in forensic technology allowed experts to re-examine evidence collected from Sarah's vehicle. What they discovered was significant. Tiny traces of DNA that had once been impossible to analyze now produced usable results. The findings placed the suspect much closer to the crime scene than he had claimed. Investigators also uncovered phone records that contradicted key parts of his story. The more evidence they uncovered, the more his version of events began to unravel. Faced with mounting pressure, the suspect changed his account multiple times. Detectives knew they were getting closer. Then came the final breakthrough. The mysterious vehicle hidden inside the photograph wasn't just a clue. It was the missing piece investigators had been searching for all along. After more than a decade of unanswered questions, the case finally had a direction. What once appeared to be an unsolvable mystery had been cracked by a detail hiding in plain sight. A clue nobody noticed. For 12 years. Cases like this remind us that the smallest details can change everything. A single photograph. A hidden reflection. And 12 years of unanswered questions. If you enjoy true crime investigations, cold cases, and evidence breakdowns, subscribe to Shadow Case Files. Every week, we uncover mysteries that continue to fascinate investigators around the world. And in our next case, we'll examine a disappearance where the victim appeared to vanish without leaving a single trace. A mystery that remains unsolved to this day. You won't want to miss it.